I'm Dani Taylor. I am the co-owner of VeganProteins online coaching and the co-founder of the Vegan Strong Plant Built team. I went vegan in 2002 for ethical reasons. I had been vegetarian since I was about 8 years old, and vegetarian all through like middle school and high school, and then in junior year of high school, I had to write a paper and I decided to write it on vegetarianism. And I stumbled across this website that explained the connection between the dairy and egg industry and the meat industry, which I was already not supporting, and I went vegan overnight because I did not want to support that industry. So I always believed like cows need to be milked. I think that's something that a lot of people believe, like cows just make milk all the time and it's, you know, it's totally fine if we drink their milk. It didn't occur to me that cows have to be pregnant in order to produce milk just like humans do, but also that, you know, those babies were then taken away, and the way that the dairy cows were treated, and then the fact that they were essentially eventually sent to the slaughter to become meat at some point. So that was pretty horrifying. And then all of the stuff about the egg laying industry and what they do to the male chicks, and I was horrified. And these were all things that everybody would say to me, well, you can still have dairy, you can still have eggs, they're not hurting those animals. And I was the same way. I agreed, like they make them anyway, it's no harm, no foul. And then when I learned more about it, I was like, immediately, I cannot participate in this anymore. So I didn't know anything about anything. I had never met another vegan in my life. Until that day, I had never even like known what a vegan was, but I went vegan overnight at that point.
Why would you go vegetarian at 8?
There was a pretty traumatizing day when I was 8. We went to like family friend's house for a cookout in the summer. And we were just kids. They sent us all to the basement to play. And in the basement was a kiddie pool with a lobster in it. You know, it had the rubber bands on its paws here, on its claws. But as little kids, we're like fascinated by this lobster. We're hanging out with it all day. And then eventually someone came and took the lobster and brought it upstairs, and all the kids ran after it, and they put it in the pot of boiling water, and it died. And we were horrified, me especially horrified. And after that, like the wheels started spinning that, you know, we eat animals, like chicken nuggets were chicken, and burgers came from cows, and bacon was pigs. And I asked my mom about it, and like, why do we eat animals? I don't understand, like they didn't do anything. And she basically said, well, some people don't eat animals, but we do. And I said, why? And she said, just because we do, basically. And I just decided I didn't want to. So, you know, I still got served meat at dinner. I would just eat everything else on the plate until they finally realized like I wasn't gonna eat it. There were like many, many fights at dinner because I would still get served whatever everybody was having, and I would just eat everything but the meat on the plate. Eventually they realized I wasn't gonna cave on this, and they kind of let it go. So that was when I gave up meat. It was because of that.
They didn't force it upon you beyond a little resistance?
I mean, they tried to. They were like, you're gonna sit there until you eat that meat. You're gonna eat what everybody else is eating. So I would just sit there until I was staying up past my bedtime. And then I was like, well, now I'm just staying up past my bedtime. And they would just be like, go to bed. So, yeah. But yeah, it wasn't too bad. You know, I think even then, even in the 90s, like vegetarianism wasn't so weird that people gave you too much pushback for it. And it wasn't that hard either. Being vegetarian is incredibly easy then, even easier now. So that wasn't too hard, but I still consumed a lot of dairy and a lot of eggs and a lot of other animal products that weren't meat for a long time, and suffered all the health consequences of that as well without realizing. I almost religiously had strep throat and ear infections constantly. I had very bad acne, which you could say like lots of teenagers get acne, and that's true, but I had it particularly badly. I was obese. Most of my family was obese, so I just thought that was a genetic thing, like, oh, this is my destiny, we are all large people. So I didn't think too much of that either. When I was 16, I was diagnosed with Polycystic ovarian syndrome, which was not a great diagnosis to get. But I just thought like, oh, it is what it is. And I never made the connection that what I was eating or doing could have anything to do with any of that. Like kids just don't think about that sort of stuff. What happens, happens. It wasn't until after I went vegan that I started to realize that I had more control over some of these outcomes than I had realized before.
Wow. And did you have like any like friends that you could talk to or that were also maybe vegetarian, or any kind of support beyond your family at all?
No, actually, I didn't know anybody. I knew of a couple of kids in high school that were vegetarian, but I wasn't actually friends with them. So no, I didn't know any other vegetarians. I had never even heard of a vegan before, let alone met one. The internet was like still in its infancy, so it's not like there were big support groups where you could go find other people, at least not that I knew about. So no, I didn't meet another vegan till like a year after I went vegan.
How did you have such a strong will to do this all on your own, essentially, even with the familial resistance and all that? I mean, that's pretty incredible. I mean, you were anchored in that from that lobster experience?
Yeah. Well, and then just after that, it was really just thinking about other experiences. Like, I grew up in rural New England. We went to lots of farms and fairs and things like that, and there are always chickens and pigs and cows, and you get to interact with them. And I also had animals, like we had dogs, and I could see that they could suffer. I could see that they could feel pain or be scared or get excited or things like that. And the fact that we were eating them when we didn't have to be eating them just baffled me. I just did not understand it at all. So I never ever felt compelled to like go back on that or anything. So.
Was it difficult when you started dating and things like
that? No, I mean, sometimes my like boyfriend's parents would think I was a little weird if I came over for dinner, but they would just tell them, oh, she's vegetarian, she doesn't eat meat. So I would just eat the side dishes, like that was pretty much it. So it maybe was, you know, there probably were a couple of jabs here and there, a couple of little jokes, but they were not enough to sway me to do anything differently. I was kind of just like a quiet, to myself kind of kid. I don't want to cause any trouble. I didn't want anybody to feel like they had to go out of their way to make me special food or anything. I would just eat what I could eat and not worry about it too much. All of that did get more complicated when I went vegan, which was when I was like 17 or so years old. That was much more challenging. People were much less understanding of that than just being vegetarian. So there was a lot of pushback when I went vegan.
Being quintessentially ethical to the core, did you become an advocate too?
Yes, especially when I went vegan, especially because I felt like I had just learned something nobody knew. I learned that dairy was not like something that cows just did for human beings like this. And I still meet people today who say like, well, the cows need to be milked. Like, we just aren't taught this, which is crazy because we understand how humans make milk and why, but we forget that cows do it for the exact same reason. So when I went vegan, I felt like I had this newfound knowledge, and if I could just tell people, they would be on board with me. They would totally just be like, wow, this is so incredible. How could these atrocities happen? I'm gonna go vegan too. Shockingly, that didn't happen. Very few people were interested in joining me on this journey, although a lot of people were surprised and did learn something by some of the information that I had to share. And I think it definitely piqued people's interests, so kind of like, oh, I never thought about it that way sort of situation. But it was very hard for me to realize that even if other people knew, that they wouldn't necessarily feel as strongly about not participating in that as I did. So that was kind of a wake up moment for me, that me just like practically yelling it with a megaphone was not going to change anybody's mind. So then I kind of changed my approach. Well, I was also getting way healthier, and that was undeniable. Anybody that knew me could see like I was completely changing into a different person physically, and that kind of became my form of advocacy from there on out, because animal rights is not going to reach as many people as I wish that it would, but everybody wants to be better. Everybody wants to be healthier, feel better, move better. So that became a much better avenue of kind of reaching people, was by just trying to live by example, basically, without actually being really preachy or shoving anything down anybody's throat, waiting for them to come ask you questions and then answering them as best you can.
Thinking about how young you were when you went vegetarian and being alone at that. The fact that you did it so hardcore, like with all that resistance, I wonder if it would have been easier later in life or even harder.
I wonder that sometimes myself, actually, because I will hear occasionally people say something like, you know, I love being vegan, but I really miss this food. They'll say some food. Yesterday at the restaurant that we went to, people were talking about like sushi, and I'd never had sushi before I went vegan. So I have nothing to compare it to. I never had any of the fancy cheeses or I have nothing to compare it to. So I don't miss it because I never had it. So sometimes I wonder if I had some of those other things, if it would have been harder for me. But at the same time, I'm always shocked when people say to me in 2023, I can't go vegan, it's too hard. And I'm like, let me tell you about what it was like to be vegan in 2002. Like, there was nothing. There were no fun foods that you could have. There was like Boca burgers, Tofutti Cutie ice cream sandwiches, end of list. Like, that was the most exciting stuff that you could find. And now it's like, I could go to Burger King and get a full vegan meal if I want to, which was unheard of 20 years ago. So practically, I think it would have been easier to go vegan now, but just because I wasn't exposed to a lot of different kinds of food, I think it was pretty easy for me even back then.
But maybe generally speaking though, in theory, it seems like the older you get, the harder it might be. Though.
Yeah.
Even though the world's changing and making it easier, as an individual, you might be so conditioned, it might be a little harder. Because kids are just straight up honest, aren't they?
Yeah, I think that's probably true. You know, people get very set in their ways. They get very set in their social circles. Expectations of friends and family change when you're older versus when you're younger. People are expecting you to evolve. But once you're like in your 30s, 40s, 50s, people pretty much expect this is who you are from here on out. So it probably is harder socially the older you get.
You know, and I also wonder how many other kids would want to do the same thing, but just don't because they don't have the support and they don't have the willpower that you had.
I think that kids inherently don't want to eat animals. Like, I have a niece and a nephew, they live with us. We care for them. They've been vegan since birth, and they're 3 and 6 now. And it's just starting to occur to the 6-year-old that other people eat animals, and she's horrified by it. Like, you know, you'll be watching a show and something will happen, and she's like, what? They're gonna eat that fish? And I'm like, yeah, other people eat fish. And I think that, you know, there's that saying, if you put a baby in a crib with a carrot and a rabbit, they're gonna play with the rabbit and eat the carrot. It's not the other way around. Children are very animal-like. They connect with animals better than adults do. So I think most children don't actually want to eat animals. They don't want to see animals being hurt. It's just that they're taught that. They're taught that that's normal and it's okay and that we're better than animals and above animals. So if that's what they're taught their whole life, then it is not surprising that, and they don't have the autonomy to be able to go out and get their own food or prepare their own meals or anything. So it's kind of like what we're serving is what you're eating, end of story. And some parents will be more forceful about that than others, you know? So I guess in some ways I'm kind of lucky that my parents just gave up as early as they did, so I was able to keep doing it.
And some people think, if it's so unnatural, then why do I enjoy it so much, you know? And if they're taught at such a young age, I mean, obviously they're gonna have a dysfunctional conditioning. That's just going to further the cognitive dissonance, I imagine. Did you have acquired taste at all to any of those animal foods before you?
Oh yeah, dairy, absolutely. I was one of those people that didn't think I could ever give up cheese. Like, because at being vegetarian from so young, cheese was like a huge staple in my diet. Like, dairy in general, we would just drink full glasses of milk, like, you know, cheese pizza all the time. I would get subs that were like veggie subs, but like extra cheese and extra mayo and all of that stuff. Yeah, I absolutely loved all of those flavors. And even before that, the only kind of meat product that I actually really liked was like buffalo chicken style stuff, which now I just put Frank's Red Hot sauce on everything and it's all buffalo flavored. But
like cauliflower or something.
Yeah, but there were years when I went vegan where there was no vegan cheese that was even remotely close to what dairy cheese tasted like. So I just, you know, I found the one vegan cheese that existed in 2002. I was so excited and I ate it and I was like, that was disgusting. And I was like, I guess we just don't eat cheese anymore. Like, and now there's so many different vegan cheeses that exist that I think are fantastic. I don't think anybody has ever tried to make the argument that those foods don't taste good. They do taste good, but the cost is not even close to worth the taste. And if we can recreate those tastes in other cruelty-free ways, why wouldn't we try to do that?
I wonder if they would taste good if you had never eaten them and then suddenly ate them, though. You know, because you're conditioned. How do you know? I mean, that's why I kind of like tell people, like, okay, this might be a good question to ask people I haven't asked, but do you think people are really making a cognizant choice to eat animals, or are they just doing it out of habit?
I think mostly people are, I mean, there are a few people that are doing it deliberately and very like, I am a carnivore, I eat keto, I eat meat and nothing else. But I think the majority of people are just doing it out of habit and convenience and cost. Those three things, like scientifically, are why people make change or don't make change: convenience, cost, taste. And if they can kind of check those boxes, they're gonna take the path of least resistance most of the time. So that's why I think it is.
Could you be with somebody who isn't vegan?
Not anymore. And I could no longer be with somebody that isn't vegan. So I was, when I first went vegan, I had a couple of different boyfriends that were not even vegetarian. They would eat vegan at my house, and they would never like give pushback or argue. They totally respected my decision, but they were not vegan themselves. But then I met Giacomo in 2008, and we hit it off, and we've been together ever since. And now, like, I feel so bad for people who are in relationships with people that aren't vegan, and they are giving them a really hard time and making things harder for them. And I understand that it is largely not a vegan world. So if you shrink the dating pool to just vegans, like, that's going to make everything significantly more challenging. But it's not even necessarily about the food being different. It's just like, if we are that fundamentally different at our core in terms of our ethics and values, this is probably not going to work long term. So I guess I would just skip that part at this point.
Earlier we were talking a little bit about advocacy, and how has that evolved for you to who you are today as an advocate?
Well, now I think that my avenue of advocacy is specifically through health and fitness and living by example. Like, that is what I have found to be the most effective form of helping people make change versus coming straight from an animal rights perspective. Like, I am still personally very much an animal rights based vegan, but in terms of helping other people make change, I want to have answers. I want to make their path to a more plant-based diet. I don't even need to like drop the vegan hammer on people, but if I can help them move down that spectrum to eating fewer animal products and hopefully transitioning towards veganism, that is the route that I am going to take. And it has been very, very effective. And just living by example in my own personal life, my family, who gave me hell when I went vegan, my sister is vegan now, my mother is vegan, her husband is vegan, my niece and nephew are vegan. So many of my family members have shifted a lot towards plant-based diets, even if they're not completely vegan. Nobody argues with it anymore. If anybody gives them crap about a vegan diet, they're like, you need to meet my cousin, or you need to meet my niece because she's a vegan and she's a bodybuilder and she helps other people do all of this stuff. So, and that was not me preaching at them. That's not me at the Thanksgiving dinner table going, well, you know what happened to that turkey on this table. I bring my own stuff to share with everybody, and I just quietly eat it. And if they have questions, I will answer it. So I don't think that like the arguing works. I think being very confident in what it is that you're doing and being healthy and happy, I think that draws people towards you, and they feel safe enough around you to ask questions, which I think is where the real magic starts to happen for other people.
There's a couple of people on YouTube that claim they were vegan and then just didn't work for them. I can't help but wonder how much of that is because they were treating it like it was a diet, though. And that's where you're trying to help people, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you're role modeling the health, but you're also encouraging the health, right? And educating the health.
Yes.
Do you try to interject the ethics too?
Not unless somebody asks. If somebody asks me a question about the ethics, then I will put it in there. I have my own thoughts about it, but I've come to realize other people are not going to 100% agree with me, and that's okay. They can still make positive change for their health, the animals, the planet, even if they're not ethically on board. You know, I always say the animals don't care why you stop eating them. If you stop eating them because of global warming, but you don't give a crap about cows, that's fine. They don't care. That's all helpful.
But you're not really telling people this.
Right. No. So I am just talking about the health aspect of it. So those folks I've recorded an entire podcast about the barrage of ex-vegans and what I think about that. And largely, I'll condense it here. I think that you are 100% correct. They are viewing it as a diet. They are viewing it specifically as an avenue to change something in their health. They think they're gonna go vegan to lose weight, or they're gonna go vegan specifically to cure XYZ health thing, or just to become like a vegan influencer or something like that. And a lot of times they're doing, in my opinion, really stupid, dangerous stuff. And then a few months later going, oh, I felt like crap as a vegan. Veganism's terrible. I can't do it. And it's like, well, maybe you should have just like eaten some food. Like when I look at what you're eating, it was very, very little and not very balanced. And duh, you didn't feel good. Like that's what I see when I look at it. So I think that it's unfortunate that a lot of those people gain a lot of popularity on their platforms, because I think that they are kind of teaching people how to do veganism poorly. And then when it doesn't go well for them, they come out with this big long sob story about how veganism almost killed them, when it's really like they just weren't doing anything intelligently in the first place.
Yeah. People hate to hear, a lot of people hate to hear this statement that they were really never vegan to begin with.
Yeah. I have thoughts about this for sure. So to me, I understand that for a lot of people it's semantics, right? Whether they're plant-based or vegan, people are like, who cares? They're eating plants, that's great. And I agree. I don't really care if you call yourself vegan or plant-based as long as you are eating plant-based. However, if we are being technical, veganism is, by definition, an ethical choice. So technically, yes, if you don't have those ethical values, you're plant-based, you're not vegan. Am I gonna say that to somebody else? No. If someone says they're vegan, I know what they mean. That's fine. I don't really care what they believe and how they got there. But yeah, I don't say like, oh, if you were vegan and now you're not, then you were never actually vegan before. But I do usually say never trust an ex-vegan. So, yeah, kind of as a joke, kind of tongue-in-cheek, because, you know, I have only lived in my body. I don't know what it's like to live in somebody else's body. I don't know what drives somebody to make the decisions that they make. And even though I may have a knee-jerk reaction of like anger about this or that, at the end of the day, we don't really know what's happening behind other people's closed doors. So I try my best to reserve judgment, unless somebody makes a big video about how veganism destroyed their health, and then you can clearly look back and see, okay, well, all you ate was salads and nothing else, or you were constantly on a water fast. That's not veganism. Like, you know, then I feel like, okay, well, you put this all out on the internet, you said this, I feel okay kind of responding to this, because I don't want other people to think that that is representative of a balanced vegan diet and it just failed. It's kind of a case-by-case situation, I think.
I've come to learn that about 60, 80, 90, there's really high stats all over the place, but they're typically way over 50% of diets fail. So if somebody's coming at this as if it's a diet, it's very likely it's going to fail. If somebody has that core, quintessential, fundamental vegan philosophy that they've embraced, then they'll find a way, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think every time I meet somebody who's vegan for health reasons, which again is fine, but I know there's a much higher likelihood that they're gonna go back at some point when they're just going vegan for health reasons, versus somebody who goes vegan for ethical reasons. It is a much smaller likelihood that they are going to go back. And I do think that's because a lot of people do approach veganism as a diet for largely for weight loss. Weight loss is a huge reason why people go vegan, and it may or may not happen. So if you go vegan for weight loss and you don't lose weight, probably not gonna stay vegan. Approaching it just as a diet, it can be a great entryway for a lot of people, and maybe they will stay that way. And if, you know, in my business, in my coaching business, we do get a lot of people that are going plant-based for health reasons. So then I feel like it's my job to make sure that they have the best possible experience as a vegan that they can. I want them to notice how much better they feel, how they could be saving money, how their health is improving, their blood work is improving, they're looking better, they're performing better, because I think when you are able to notice all of those things, even if you're vegan for health reasons, you're more likely to stay that way, because why would anybody want to go back from that?
Yeah. And if they don't have a coach, there's a tremendous learning curve, because their whole life they've been doing something completely different. How are they supposed to just magically know how to do it, right?
Yeah, when I went vegan, I had nobody. I didn't know anybody. I did everything wrong. Like, I did all the stupid vegan things that you could possibly do in the beginning. And that's part of the reason that I feel qualified to help people now. It's like, oh, I know what you're gonna try to do. Let me help you skip that step here. There's a huge learning curve. And most people, if I had to give one piece of like blanket, here's what you're doing wrong, they're under eating. They're under eating because they took the meat and the dairy off their plate and then they replaced it with like broccoli. So calorically, they're eating way, way less. And, you know, if they have hundreds of pounds to lose, that might work out just fine. But if they don't have a lot of weight to lose and they're eating in that big of a caloric deficit, and they do that for 2 or 3 months, they're not gonna feel very good after 2 or 3 months because they're chronically underfed, and they're gonna say, I went vegan and I felt weak and I felt tired, and they think it's veganism specifically, when really it was just a giant caloric deficit that they didn't even notice they put themselves in.
And see, you, like me, I was primed up for it. So I already had a predilection for beans, greens, grains, fruits, and all that. And I'd already predominantly been eating that way. So if somebody's not already eating this way, they don't, again, there's not only that learning curve, but then there's the acclimation. And as far as the caloric part, I've heard that, you know, and I've thought about that. If they're eating a super nutrient dense diet, less calories sometimes isn't a problem.
Sometimes it isn't a problem. But a lot of people who are already health conscious get into veganism for health reasons. So they're already kind of fit, kind of lean. They don't have a lot of weight to spare. And this is just physics. Calories in versus calories out when it comes to your size. So if somebody who's already pretty healthy goes vegan but cuts their calories down by 1/3, they're gonna start losing muscle mass.
And
Damn.
hopefully not power.
Yeah, yeah, hopefully not power. They're gonna start losing muscle mass, they're gonna start losing size, their body is gonna start reserving energy, so they're gonna feel sluggish. So even if they're eating tons of nutrients, calories unfortunately still are king, especially when you are already like a healthy body weight and healthy body size. You can't afford to do that, and you're gonna think, oh, it's the lack of meat that's making me feel crappy, when it's really the lack of calories that's making you feel crappy after a period of time.
Couldn't there also be something where they're overeating too? Because that's happened to me.
That,
or even wrong time of day, you know?
That is a relatively new phenomenon, the going vegan and overeating, because of all of the fun stuff that exists now. So it's funny, when I started coaching people in 2008, a lot of times I was trying to help people not be so afraid of anything that was considered a fun food. Woo!
Hold on a minute. Let's just let everybody know where we're at. So let's let everybody know where we're at.
We are at Leaves and Roots Kava Cafe in Fort Lauderdale, and there is apparently a massive thunderstorm happening that just sounded like a straight gunshot and scared the crap out of me.
Yeah, and we're here for this event.
Yes.
What was the event?
The Vegan Health and Fit Expo with the first ever vegan bodybuilding show.
The second, actually.
Yeah, it was the second one, but I should say it's the only vegan bodybuilding show. And I was here as a judge of that show.
And this was like, what, a couple days after an historical, unprecedented rainfall.
Yeah, lots of flooding. Yeah, now clearly a thunderstorm.
So that's not our stomach.
Yeah. Okay, back in 2008, I would get people who would come to me for health and fitness advice. They want to build muscle, but they're like afraid of every food, right? They're like, oh, I can't have tofu, that's terrible for you. And I'm like, okay, buddy, tofu is gonna be a helpful food for you. You don't need to be afraid of food. You don't need to be afraid of vegan food. And this was very much a huge part of our coaching style back in 2008.
Wow.
Now, where you can walk into Burger King and buy a whole vegan meal, like right off the menu without any changes at all, now we're having to actually talk to people about, okay, yes, you can enjoy some fun foods here and there, but that cannot be like the base of your diet, because now it's possible that you can just eat a standard American diet as a vegan. That was not possible 20 years ago. So now we got to be careful, because you can go vegan and actually increase the amount of high caloric density foods that you're eating if you're not careful. Yeah. So yeah, you can go vegan and gain weight by accident. That is possible for sure.
Well, I mean, for me, it wasn't necessarily gaining weight. I got a little bit of like stomach problem at one point, and it was because I was just having too much fun with all these vegan foods, and it weren't even processed foods. There was just, I mean, I'm talking in the kitchen, I'm cooking stuff, and you start bulk cooking, bulk preparing things, and it's like, and then you just start eating, and I was just snacking, and I had bad habits, and I was eating late, and that really messed my stomach up big time.
We work with people like that too, that have been vegan for a long time, and they've just kind of fallen into these kind of habits of eating a certain way, or like, snacking while they're cooking meals and things like that, or not timing their food well around their workouts to feel their best. And there are all types of vegans that, are seeking some help to feel better, look better, perform better. And that's what we do specifically.
Yeah. When I was having those problems, I did a 2-day fast, and then I started doing intermittent fasting and trying to get the bulk of my calories earlier in the day.
Right.
And that made the world of difference. Like everything just solved.
Yeah, and everybody's different, and that's the thing. Like if you just start looking on the internet, you're gonna find
the carnivore gods are getting mad.
If you start looking on the internet, like if you were to Google something like that, like stomach feels terrible, blah, blah, you're gonna find a million different suggestions that all contradict each other. So there is a level of self-experimentation you have to do to find out what works best for you. And it sounds like for you, getting your calories in earlier in the day is super helpful. For other people, it's like eliminating one food that's really bothering them, or they're not hydrated enough, or they're sleeping really poorly. Like it can be all these different things. So we kind of try to hone in on what that is and help them fix it.
Are you familiar with the 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine?
Maybe.
The reason why I brought up the 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine is because nutrition is just one of them.
Right.
Stress management, sleep, social support, exercise, and not doing drugs.
Okay. Yeah, and that I've never heard it put that way, the 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine, but I'm on board. We take a very holistic approach to all of fitness, really, because a lot of people are so obsessed with their nutrition that they have completely not realized that they are becoming insanely neurotic about it, and that's not good for them either. So we have to work on the stress side of things. Or they're exercising like exactly how you should, but the nutrition isn't there to support it, or they do all of these things, but they sleep like crap. So
yeah. You know what's crazy though? At the end of the day, we say there's a huge learning curve. We say there's all these ways you could do it wrong, but at the end of the day, once you master it, it's like so insanely simple.
Yes. Yes, and sometimes we get some flack for our advice being so simple. Yes, there are little details and tricks and this and that you can do and should try out, but at the end of the day, like, eat lots of plants, move your body, get some sunshine, sleep well, drink water, like this is it, that's really the secret to the majority of like health and wellness right there. So yeah, I agree.
That's so cool that your nieces and nephews are vegan from birth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is this in part you're doing?
Well, my sister is vegan also, because that is of my doing. But then she was vegan through her whole pregnancy. Actually, she was told she could never have children. And then she went vegan. She lost 200 pounds, cured her polycystic ovarian syndrome, which was the same thing I had, and got pregnant. Vegan through the whole pregnancies, had 2 healthy babies that are amazing, healthy, smart little kids that have, you know, other than a few colds here and there, they've never had any health problems in their whole little lives. So,
Awesome.
Yeah.
I really have like a huge affinity for raising children vegan from birth. I think that's really going to be the biggest wave of the movement.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of them that I've been accumulating interviews and stuff, and people like you that have family members that are doing that.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad you shared that, because this is just going to be another one in the arsenal of videos that I'm going to be putting out with vegans from birth, you know?
Yeah, it has its own whole set of challenges that I never would have considered, because it's not actually feeding them. That's easy. It's dealing with the social situations around the kids is so much more challenging than I ever thought it would be. Like having to talk to their teachers, because kids, someone will have a birthday, and bringing cupcakes for the class, and they're not vegan. Your kid can't have the cupcake, and they don't understand because they have cupcakes at home. So what's the, you know, at that age, they can't tell this cupcake has dairy in it and eggs, and this cupcake is vegan. To them, it's just a cupcake, so they don't understand why they can't have it with the class. And it is very challenging in that regard, but feeding them and keeping them healthy, that's super easy.
Yeah. So again, what is the name of your business?
VeganProteins online coaching.
When you say vegan proteins, sometimes I think it's like a supplement.
So it was, okay, this is the story. We owned the first ever vegan supplement store in the world, and it was called VeganProteins, because when we started it, if you wanted to buy a plant-based protein powder, you couldn't. Like, there was only soy protein that you could buy online from like a random place. So we started a store for all different kinds of vegan protein powders, vitamins, supplements, for people that were interested in that sort of thing. But as it's become more popular, now you can walk into CVS and buy those things. So we realized, you know, our store didn't need to exist anymore. But over the years, people were coming to us for help with their building muscle, getting shredded. People wanted coaches for bodybuilding competitions. So we just kind of pivoted our whole business model to just do the coaching. But we've been Vegan Proteins since the start, so that name has just stuck.
Yeah. And so the services that you offer, talk about that, like, you know, just in a nutshell. Like, what's your elevator pitch if you're trying to explain to somebody, you know, what you offer and how you deliver it?
Sure. So we help vegans get in the best shape of their life with a bunch of different levels of coaching depending on what someone needs. So we have a membership called Muscles by Brussels, where people get their training, recipes, live group coaching calls, etc. We also run occasional fat loss challenges that we run as a group, or muscle building challenges that we run as a group. And then the sort of like top tier service is one-on-one coaching, which is kind of the heart and soul of what we do, is very, very personal, hands-on, watching everything that you do, talking constantly to help people do all sorts of things. Some people are just going vegan and they want to get it right. You know, they've tried before and this time they want to get it right. Some people are world-class champion bodybuilders, power lifters, and everything in between. You know, so that is specifically what we do. We have a reputation for coaching vegan, natural bodybuilders from the start. So that's sort of part of our niche. But we really do work with anybody that's vegan that just wants to better themselves in some way.
Awesome. And that URL?
www.veganproteins.com.
And don't you also have another project?
Yes, and I'm sure Giacomo will talk about this ad nauseum for you, but we co-founded the Vegan Strong Plant Built team, which is the largest team of vegan strength athletes in the world. We have a bodybuilding team, powerlifting team, CrossFit team, kettlebell team, Olympic lifting team, strongman team, and we all compete at one giant event per year. It's the Mr. America in Atlantic City, New Jersey. And essentially our team of some 50 different athletes show up in all of our vegan gear, and we enter these competitions where we compete against other non-vegan athletes in this huge competition. And it kind of all happens in one weekend. So the hope when things go well is that we seriously kick some ass. And at the end of the day, people are like, wait, how are the vegans winning all day? Like, what are they doing that we're not? So it really piques the interest and curiosity of other athletes who have believed their whole life you couldn't possibly be a good athlete as a vegan, and they just got beat by one, and now they want to know how. So it's super, super fun, very inspiring. We have some of the world's greatest vegan athletes on that team, all natural, all drug-free. It's pretty awe-inspiring to see.
Do you guys do a polygraph?
So there is this particular bodybuilding competition, there's no polygraph, but there is urinalysis. So they can check for things that way. That's what they do. It's legit.
And that URL is plantbuilt?
Plantbuilt.com.
Excellent. Now, do you have a quote?
Do I have a quote?
You want to share? Yeah, any quotes?
Oh.
Or a slogan even.
Well, I mean, if I had to share a slogan, it would be that plants have all the protein you need.
There you
like,
go.
That's pretty much it. You don't have to get too fancy about it.
Yeah. The whole plant protein thing, it's my understanding that when you take in excess protein, you just pee it out.
Yes and no. You can. It depends on what you're trying to do, really. So this is one of the spots where, like, Giacomo and myself and some of the other vegan bodybuilders, we're going to disagree with what a lot of some of the other people in the industry have to say, because we work with high-level athletes that do need more protein than just the average person. Now, that does not mean that they need a ton of protein. It's just a lot of the vegan community says, if you're eating a well-balanced vegan diet, you don't have to worry about protein at all. That's true. You won't die, right? You're not going to end up in the hospital with a protein deficiency just eating whole food plant-based diet. But we're not just trying to not die. We're trying to win world championships. And it does require more protein in order to do that. So yes, a lot of our athletes do have a higher focus on protein. Tofu, tempeh, seitan, TVP, lentils, nutritional yeast, some of the mock meats that exist. Like, all of these things can be helpful for them. Are they necessary for everybody? No. Are they helpful if you're trying to be a top tier athlete? Yes, absolutely. Is it helpful if you're trying to look like a top tier athlete? Yes, totally. So it's kind of, sometimes it's a little bit of a controversial topic in the vegan community, but as someone who works with athletes like exclusively, that's kind of where we fall on that.
Having been vegan this long in a non-vegan world, I'm sure that's got to bring you down. How do you cope?
Ooh, that's a great question, actually. It is a little bit depressing to realize that, you know, I am probably not going to see a fully vegan world in my lifetime, but in the last 20 years, just the last 20 years, you know, if you talk to Jeff Palmer, he's been vegan 35 years, like 38, I think maybe it's 38, but, you know, he's seen it even more than I have. But just in my 20 years, the rate at which veganism is growing, it's almost exponential. You know, there was like virtually no movement in the first few years that I was vegan, and then it's like exploded, and it keeps exploding. When I started coaching online, we were the only vegan coaches online, the only ones. We were it. Now there's hundreds, maybe thousands even. So, like, that's mind-blowing to me, and it's promising. And even when we go out with Vegan Strong to the Olympia, the Arnold, the biggest fitness expos in the world, we just go there to talk to people about a plant-based diet. When we started doing that, I was afraid that people were going to heckle us and just be trolls and be awful. I mean, these are the biggest meat and dairy eaters in the world. They're all on steroids. Like, we're over there, natural vegan athletes, talking to them about eating plants. I was like, they're gonna rip us limb from limb. And you know what? They didn't. They didn't at all. You would get the biggest pumped up steroid guy coming over to the table, and internally I'd go, here we go. And he would say, vegan, huh? Yeah, I should probably be more vegan, but I just don't know how, or I don't know how to keep my muscle or eat this much protein as a vegan. And then we could tell them, like, here's what I would do if I was you, buddy. I would X, Y, Z, but they were open to it. even though they were nowhere near vegan themselves. So I think the mindset that even non-vegans have around veganism has shifted so much. And I think that the fitness, health, wellness community or whatever, things like Game Changers has helped change that mindset a lot. And it's like, as people start to think differently about what it means to be vegan, we just want to be there to help guide people sort of down that road. So even though it's kind of hard to be vegan in a non-vegan world and realize like I can't just change other people, I think the direction and the rate at which it's moving is very promising.
And that's enough to help you cope.
Yes. Yes, it is. Every person that moves down that plant-based, shift is helping the planet. And, if you wanted a real quote, I would say that we need, billions of people doing veganism imperfectly rather than thousands of people doing veganism perfectly. Yes, I would love everybody to be 100% vegan, but if we can get the masses to just give up meat like one day a week, that's gonna do so much more than this tiny little group of people being perfectly 100% vegan. So.
Yeah, my only concern with that, when I first started VeganLinked, I went to an event. It was a screening for The Last Pig, and it was at the Humane League. I had no idea what I was going into. I took somebody who wasn't vegan, and it was a kind of a surprise. Hey, we're gonna go check a screening out, And at the end, they were talking moderation. I'm like, I don't know about this,
Yeah.
Well, sure enough, this person tries it. Nothing happened. And so they gave up.
Oh, interesting.
And so I personally, I don't know how effective a meatless Monday is. Some people say, why don't you just try a meat Monday? And then the rest of the time you're not meat. You're
sure. I mean, I'm on board with that too.
I just thought that was kind of funny, but really, I think in order to really experience, if your focus is health, I guess, the benefits, don't you really have to give it all up and have a certain amount of time to really have your taste buds change, to have your weight loss, your type 2 diabetes, all these things, reversed and all. And you have to have a certain amount of time to really, and a certain amount of commitment. I don't know that a meatless Monday is really gonna change.
Yeah, I don't know if it's gonna change people to become 100% vegan, but it would, if we cut, I don't know what the percentage is. What is it, like 8% if people, 8% decrease in consumption if people cut stuff out for one day a week? The companies would feel that. The companies would really feel that and have to start shifting where they spend their money. And, that's a whole other topic, is like big meat companies deciding to also make vegan meats.
You're talking more on a grand scale. I'm talking about as an individual, So I just wanted to make sure on an individual basis that the message is ideally would be a little different.
Yeah.
And of course
absolutely.
It's astronomically impactful, for the whole world to not eat meat for a day.
Yeah, but an example would be like when we go to these not these vegan fitness expos, these large mainstream fitness expos. If we can get these people that are coming over to the booth to talk to us to swap their whey protein powder out for a plant-based one, that's a huge impact on the supplement industry, on the dairy industry, but also hopefully they will start to feel better because it's gonna digest better. They're gonna realize, oh, I switched this out and I didn't lose my muscle. Maybe there's something to this vegan thing. So sometimes even if we can just get them to do that, then hopefully that's an in for more change down the line. But I do agree, on an individual level, you need to make more change than that to feel different and look different and perform different.
And it's important to plant seeds too and not expect people to do it overnight. It's the same time, right? You've had a lot of successes, with your family, which is kind of rare.
Yeah. Well, it took a long time.
And you did that through role modeling and all. Is there any other successes that you would like to share, even if you weren't directly a part of it, or if you were, like with other people, that would be cool worth sharing? Your sisters, that's huge.
My sister.
Is there any other ones kind of like that?
My sister was one of the biggest, most incredible changes of my life. Some of the other successes that I've had largely come down to bodybuilding specifically. Even for myself, I know I mentioned it briefly, but I was obese when I went vegan.
Wait, hold on. Obese or overweight?
Obese. I was obese when I went vegan. Again, I just thought that I always would be because my family largely was, and I just, we're a big family, we're big boned, like that sort of thing. And like I said, I did veganism terribly when I first did it. French fries, plain bagels, Coca-Cola, all those things are vegan, and 16-year-olds will definitely eat that. But I went to the doctor a couple months later, and they said, oh, you lost 30 pounds since the last time you were in here, so whatever you're doing, keep it up. And I was like, what? Like, I didn't even notice because I just didn't care at that point. But it was the first time that I thought, what I'm putting in my mouth or not putting in my mouth is making a difference. So I didn't know anything about nutrition at that point. I knew nothing about exercise whatsoever. I had always been the fat kid. Like, I didn't care about gym class. After that, I started learning more about nutrition. I started going to the gym. I learned how to lift weights and eventually lost 90 pounds, built a lot of muscle, and went on to become a champion vegan figure competitor that now coaches all of these other vegan bodybuilders, figure competitors, bikini athletes. That is such a 180 shift from who I thought that I was going to be. All of those ear infections and strep throat stuff, gone. PCOS, the polycystic ovarian syndrome, gone. I have no signs of that whatsoever. And they told me that I had to eat a low carb diet to combat that, which I definitely did not eat a low carb diet. I just got way healthier and it just went away, just like what happened to my sister. The acne, gone. Like, it's just the way that it changed my whole life and my outlook on life was so huge that to date it is the best decision that I ever made in my life, and I made it by accident, stumbling across a website, writing a high school English paper. Just absolutely awesome. And then I met Robert Cheek and Giacomo, and we all became fast friends, and that was 15 years ago, and we're all still like this to this day. So
you were a junk food vegan in the beginning, right?
Oh yes. Yeah. As much as I could be in 2002, but yes.
And that's interesting to me because you were capable of doing that and still getting results.
Yes.
And I think that's probably because you were already primed up for it. You were already vegetarian, maybe. Mm-hmm. Had you been like a hardcore omnivore, being a junk food vegan might not have had maybe as much. Maybe, yeah.
I don't know. I really think that cutting out, like literally just not having access to cheese anymore and ice cream, like I think that was it. Even though I was still eating like not very nutritious food I was trying to eat fruits and vegetables and stuff, but I was mostly what was available to me in 2002 was French fries, potato chips, chips and salsa, a baked potato, like very boring, not very well balanced stuff, but I still got results. I lost probably half of that 90 pounds kind of eating trash that just happened to be vegan. The next 45 pounds, I was deliberately trying to learn more about nutrition, started incorporating things like beans and learning how to cook different kinds of foods I had never cooked. So that was more deliberate. But yeah, I made a lot of progress almost accidentally.
Yeah, and so that happened to me too. I went vegan for totally ethical reasons after watching Gary Yourofsky's Best Speech. I didn't know anything about nutrition, zero, like literally. And all I did was cut out the animal. I didn't do anything else.
Right.
I just probably, just naturally ate a little more of what I was already eating.
Right.
And that was, like you said, French fries. I might go to Bojangles and get their beans or whatever.
Yes.
Go to McDonald's and get the oatmeal. That was probably the healthiest thing.
Right.
And then, just when I'm traveling or whatever. But, I didn't really know how to eat at all. But 5 years later, I got my blood work done, and I had done it right before I went vegan.
Right.
And it went from 168 total cholesterol down to 121. HDL went up, LDL and triglycerides went down. And that was a junk food vegan for 5 years. My visceral fat vanished. I reflected and I was like, holy moly, I haven't been sick in 5 years.
Right.
And I used to get sick 2 times a year, And then I became more nutrition focused in 2017. So that's when I started VeganLinked. But because then I realized everybody could do this.
Yeah. Well, this sounds very similar. It actually sounds very similar to my path as well.
I think that's important to get that out there, that it specifically seems to be the animal stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. I would encourage anybody to try it. Like, just try it. But, you know, do it right. Make sure you're eating enough. Like, go vegan, give up the animal stuff, but don't just eat like a bird after that. Just make sure you eat as much, like, eat plenty. Eat lots of beans and sweet potatoes and nuts and seeds and
that's the simple
vegetables.
part. I mean, beans, greens, grains, fruits, veggies, mushrooms, nuts, seeds.
But a lot of people decide not just that they're gonna go vegan, they're gonna go vegan and keto. Or they're gonna go vegan and they're just gonna eat fruit and nothing else. And it's like,
yeah, the yo-yo dieting, I've noticed that too in a lot of the. Now, what do you think about this carnivore stuff?
I think it's ridiculous. I mean, I don't really have any other words for it. It's just that I think it is completely ridiculous I mean, it is so insane to me that people would deliberately exclude, not that they would eat meat. I understand people eat meat. And I can even understand why people come to that conclusion in their mind, but the idea of excluding plants is truly one of the dumbest things I've ever heard.
I think it's a last ditch. Wait, you said the dumbest thing?
To exclude plants, yeah. Like,
and that's funny because one of my videos that I released a couple months ago, Dr. Garth Davis, the thumbnail, carnivorism is dumb.
Yeah, it is. There are so many nutrients that are only found in plant foods. Fiber is only found in plant foods. Like,
but it's not essential.
But I mean, if there ever was like sort of a magical nutrient, it's fiber, in my opinion. I think time is going to show us that like fiber is really the key to longevity. Like, I think research is going to keep showing us that for many years to come, and it's only found in plants. So, I mean, to each their own. People can do whatever it is they want to do, but my opinion is not eating plant foods is really, really stupid. So.
Is there any last minute encouraging words to wrap it up with?
Encouraging words, yes. I would say if you are trying to become more plant-based, if you're trying to go vegan and you're stumbling and you're having moments where you slip up or whatever, don't beat yourself up about it. Be kind to yourself about it. You are not going to hate yourself better. You know, you have to be nice to yourself in order to have the same compassion for yourself that you're trying to have for animals, and allow yourself to be imperfect as you move forward, because that's the only path forward.
Yeah, because none of us went from non-vegan to perfect vegan overnight. None of us. Like, yeah, I know people who've been vegan for many, 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 many decades and still are learning, you know? And still, you know, stuff happens. I remember, I'm, again, junk food vegan, but I remember when I was brand new vegan, I was so excited that Pop-Tarts were vegan. And I remember, I didn't even know. I don't know. Well, they're not. Here's the thing. So I was sitting there, make sure we throw that in there. So I'm sitting there eating this Pop-Tart on like a field trip in high school, and I'm looking at, because it says, you know, doesn't contain dairy or eggs or anything, and I'm like, sweet. And then I realized it had gelatin in it, in the like frosting or whatever. And I mean, even as little as a year ago, I accidentally had something that, you know, I asked for it with soy milk, and they put dairy milk in it, and I didn't know till after I drank it. Like, and I knew after I drank it because I could feel it in my stomach. I was like, damn. But like, it happens. You're not a bad person. Like, just pay more attention next time. Like, you can do this. Keep moving forward, for sure. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time. It's an honor, and I can't wait to check out that event that's coming up. You absolutely have to come. And then what's it called again? So it's the name of the competition is the Mr. America. Yeah, it's the same competition Arnold used to compete in, and it disappeared for a long time, but now it's back, and we're gonna have a vegan win Mr. America this year. Yeah. That's our hope. Our bikini athlete won last year. She won the whole show. So hopefully this year we can get the Mr. part down too. No, I'm excited to check that out. I really, really hope I can. And that's in October. And hopefully, is it every year in October? Yes. Okay. So far, it's been every year in October. Nice. And is it always in the same location? Yes. It's in, I forget the name of the hotel, but it's a casino in Atlantic City. Yeah. Nice. Sounds like a blast. Well, thanks again, and you rock. Thank you. This was fun.